God knows at T1 you're going to raise your hand. Do you have the ability then to not raise your hand?
Well, I believe that we do have the ability to not raise our hands.
Blasphemous.
Okay, I think it's helpful just to start with an idea of God and an idea of free will so that we can get a sense for why some people take God and his knowledge to be incompatible with free will. So a lot of people believe that God is omniscient and take that to include that God has knowledge of what will happen in the future, including what we will do in the future. But if God is God, it's not just that he happens to be omniscient and to know what's going to happen in the future. He's also infallible. Like, he can't be wrong about what's going to happen in the future. And so that idea that God infallibly foreknows what's going to happen, including how you and I are going to act, that's what seems to call into question whether we have free will. Now, the argument focuses on one conception of free will. Some people use the term free will as a technical term just to mean this, which is the freedom or the ability to do other than what one actually does. So take some,
Hey, Stillman.
It could be a trivial action,
Yes.
It could be a really
Pause
important.
it for a second.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a quick note, and I want to get into this more later, but he's talking about the ability to do otherwise here. And that is one version of libertarian freedom, but not the only version. You've got the sourcehood version, which simply means that one is not causally determined. So if one is not causally determined, then they're free in the libertarian sense, even if for some weird reason they don't have the ability to do otherwise. But as Philip, I think, said in this conversation, if one is the source and is not causally determined, then why wouldn't they have the ability to do otherwise, or the principle of alternative possibilities? And I say, yeah, I agree, but let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, that for some weird reason, who knows what it is, a person can't do otherwise, as long as they are not causally determined, then they're still free in a libertarian sense. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out very quickly, and I do plan on talking about that more later on.
Yeah, that was perfect, because the first thing I was going to ask as soon as the clip finished, I was going to be like, real quick, let's straighten out the definition of libertarian freedom here, and then get into the secondary part. That's cool. Perfect.
Cool.
Decision for any action that you will in fact perform. Some people think in order for you to do that thing freely, to have free will with respect to that action, it had to have been the case that you could have done otherwise, that you could have performed some other action instead, or at least not done the thing you did. So we're going to use the example of me or someone else raising their hand at a certain time. So suppose that, right now I raise my hand. Okay, so did I have free will with respect to that action? Well, on this conception of free will, in order for me to count as raising my hand freely, it had to have been the case that at that time I could have done something else instead, like not raise my hand. Okay, so now if God has, if he's infallible and has foreknowledge of what I'm going to do, then it looks like God existed 1,000 years ago, knew then exactly what I would do, whether I'd raise my hand or not. And because he's infallible, it seems like he can't be wrong. And thus this is the basic idea of the argument, that I couldn't have refrained from doing what God knew I was going to do. So that's a kind of rough presentation of it. I guess now we could talk through the more detailed formulation.
But before we get to his more detailed formulation, we're going to get into that. So what do you think about that? I guess that'll be my first question, is kind of what he just outlined there is, okay, God knows at T1 you're going to raise your hand. Do you have the ability then to not raise your hand?
Well, I believe that we do have the ability to not raise our hands.
Blasphemous.
And I think we can demonstrate this, and I think we can unpack that more as we go. But I'll just say right up front that I think we do still have the ability to do otherwise, and in this case, to refrain from raising our hands. However, let's just say I'm wrong about that. That doesn't mean we don't have the freedom, that we don't have libertarian freedom in this case. As long as we are not causally determined, then we are still free in a libertarian sense.